Hello and welcome to Take Your Points. On this week's show, our guests are Cahal Carvill, a Gaelic Life columnist. He's on to talk about players getting involved in social and political issues, and Clare Timoney, the former Antrim player and Bredagh player, who is on to talk about ladies football and her career and what it's like after stopping playing for Antrim. Okay, so Cahal Carvill's here to talk about the current issues that are facing us this week, and one of the main issues I want to start with is your column from previous week was about players getting involved in social and political issues, and you were very keen to that they do that. So I wanted to ask you why you sort of decided to head on that point in last week's Gaelic Life column.
People might think it was a controversial topic. The feedback I had was on both sides of the fence, i.e., the GAA should be an apolitical entity and shouldn't be getting involved, and certainly the high-profile players involved in the GAA shouldn't be involving themselves in political issues. But my topic, I think, was slightly wider than that. It wasn't just the politics of this island. It was also, the social issues, the social justice issues, and the fact that if players just aren't robots, they aren't machines, they aren't developed to run up and down the field without any sort of wider life experience, and also they're shaped by the areas they come from, and that's natural. And the reason I went for this angle was because of the steps taken by the Mayo players, current and past, and Donegal, especially the Donegal GAA hurling and football teams, who came out very strongly in support of those who had been impacted by the Mica scandal in relation to the residential homes in the community in which those players are based, and the communities that produce those great footballers and hurlers and ladies footballers and camogie players. So the fact that they had thrown their support behind that movement, and also the fact that a lot of the past players were impacted and were involved, I felt like that was a good thing. And going back through the years, we have seen many very famous GAA players. The Jack Lynch comes to mind, who have gone into politics and strive to make this area and make this island better. And given that the GAA is community based, it's based in social issues and it's the very fabric of the community, it would be remiss of GAA players just to concentrate on their football or hurling and not even to think about the wider context, the people they represent, and the actual social and political issues that the people they represent and the communities they're born into are facing. So that was the genesis of the piece. You could fall on both sides of the argument, but I felt very strongly that there was a responsibility on players to use their voice, to give that voice to some of these social and political issues which are very apparent at this time.
Do you think that there are some players who don't want to give their opinions or are scared to?
Well, certainly my piece wasn't you have to do that, but if you feel strongly about something and it's a real passion of yours, then you shouldn't be cowed by what other people think, or you shouldn't be put into the box of you're a GAA player, and because you're a GAA player you shouldn't have views outside of that there, or we just want to see you play football or hurling or ladies football or camogie, and outside of that we don't want to listen to you. People from this part of the world that play the GAA are well-rounded, well-educated, have formed very strong views on certain issues, and because you're a GAA player, that shouldn't preclude you from voicing those opinions and trying to enact change in this part of the world. And I think there's a responsibility on GAA players across the piece to actually voice their opinions and to try and create and move change in this part of the world.
Yeah, so you're really going back to the point where you say that players have to show more of their personality, or should show more of their personality, like not be so serious or not be so, fearful.
Yeah, well, I think maybe, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but more, corporate in terms of their views, that they sit down and they say, we're not going to give anything away here. We're going to just give the same old answers to any journalists that ask us about, what's going on. Yes, it was a good game. They're a great team. They're going to, put it up to us. They've been playing well, and all the usual stuff that we've heard day in, day out. I think you should have an opinion, express it. If you are confident, why not say so? If you think you're going to beat the other team, why not say it? Because at the end of the day, you still have to go out in the field and do that there, and you shouldn't be afraid to show confidence. You shouldn't be afraid to show personality, and I don't think that does a disservice to the team by doing that. And we all like characters. There's so many different characters and so many different personalities in the GAA, and why try and hide that, and why try and push that down the pecking order in terms of what we are as a community, what we are as an organisation, and I think that should be encouraged.
Mm-hmm. We're getting towards Ulster Championship. It's this weekend is Donegal and Down, but the weekend just past, Derry played Offaly in the League Division 3 final, and they were the only football final to be played. I wanted to ask you if you think that would be a positive for Derry, or do you think it'll be good for them to play that game, or will it help them going into the Ulster Championship, which is the winners of Donegal?
Yeah, so they have 2 weeks to the next game, and ultimately I certainly think it can only be a positive. The more games you get under your belt, the more, and they won, of course, which you can't forget about, and they have that momentum behind them now, and wins create momentum. Lifting silverware creates that momentum as well, and some of the scores taken, you've seen the clip of Shane McGuigan's outlandish point from the sideline, and that breeds confidence. Winning in Croke Park, getting used to being back in Croke Park to win. Yes, it was Division 3, but you can only beat what's in front of you. They have now that momentum. We've spoken before about Conor Glass coming back, and I think it took him a while to get back into the GAA, but certainly he's been a big addition to the team, and certainly I think that winning mentality, lifting silverware, winning in Croke Park, it can only be a positive going into the Ulster Championship. And no doubt, whoever comes out of Donegal and Down, Derry will be licking their lips and looking forward to that one.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you think that they've got any sort of chance of beating 2 teams that are playing in the leagues above them?
I think if you were to say, and not to do any disrespect to Down, but certainly I think that Donegal are going to come out on top in terms of the preliminary round game. But Donegal without Michael Murphy don't have that fear factor, and certainly Rory Gallagher is astute enough at this stage, and he's got his team playing more of an attack-minded game, and I think they're certainly going to go for the throat with Donegal. And when they don't have that fear factor, and when Derry express themselves, I think that's going to be a real humdinger of a game. And certainly the Derry boys won't fear Donegal if they do come through from Down, and they'll also get to sit back and look at that Down and Donegal game and take the game plan that Donegal implement and to try and dissect that. So I think they're in an advantage in terms of having the win at the weekend there, and then looking ahead to Down and Donegal, and using that game as a sort of benchmark in terms of their tactics. Okay,
last year we talked about Derry being such a great attacking force, and we think that come championship football it'll be different. But is there a danger there people could run away from themselves and think, we've cruised through Division 3, we could put up a test here or put up a good fight here, when in reality probably they won't?
Well, I don't know. I think they have that momentum behind them, and they look extremely well conditioned now. And in saying that, the Donegal boys have come back in very well conditioned, and I think they have been okay in terms of Division 1. And to be fair, in terms of how it's worked out with the Donegal Armagh match, and I was actually thinking about this the last week, Donegal had went on to the semi-final and played Dublin, and were pretty comprehensively beaten, whereas Armagh from that game went and played Roscommon and won, and they're on a high coming out of it. So maybe it was a good thing that Armagh didn't win that game. But Donegal certainly, I don't think they'll be complacent against Derry, but I think without Murphy, Donegal are maybe not as good as they probably could have been, and Derry coming off the back of that momentum and coming off that Division 3 win are maybe a wee bit better than Donegal might give them credit for. So I think with marrying the two, and again the Down still have a chance there, so we're not completely disregarding them, but I do think Donegal will come through, and I think that's going to be a real mix of styles and of two teams at different stages, and it's going to be very interesting.
What do you think the tactics for Down should be? Like, how do you think they should approach this game? What do they have to do? Should they give up kickouts, sit back? What do you think?
Well, I'm not a fan of giving up kickouts on in any team. I think they need to push on and press the kickouts, press the Donegal kickouts, and make them make mistakes. Because no team's infallible when you put them under pressure. But if you give away the kickouts and draw the team onto you, I think it's a recipe for disaster. And especially with a team like Down, who aren't, putting up high scores, who don't have those, I suppose, household names and the leaders that some of the other Ulster teams do have. They need to be there or thereabouts throughout the match to give themselves any chance. They're not going to blow teams away. They're not going to kick 30 points. They need to be putting the pressure on, staying in the game, and that doesn't. I certainly think inviting Donegal onto them will only result in one winner. And once Donegal get their backs up, it's going to be very hard for a Down team that aren't. Be honest, they haven't been the flatter to deceive over the National League. So I certainly think that they need to press up and they need to push the game and they need to put that doubt into Donegal early.
Yeah. Okay. We'll just move on to the hurling, because it's another big weekend for hurling. In the big game being for Ulster anyway, as Antrim Dublin. What do you think Antrim's chances are? I suppose is the first thing to ask.
Well, I think they have a great chance. I really, really do. Going back to round 3 of the league when they played Dublin down in Parnell Park, that was a difficult fixture on the basis that they had a great result against Clare. They went down to play Kilkenny and had a pretty decent result, a 6-point loss down in Nolan Park. And then they had to go to Parnell Park third week on the bounce to play Dublin. And I think maybe the surprise factor had gone from Antrim at that stage. And then against Dublin, I think they ran out of steam a wee bit and it was very hard to maintain those levels throughout 3 weeks. So I think again, come this weekend, they've every opportunity of beating a good Dublin team. I wouldn't say a great Dublin team. They have the Burks, they have Rush, who's been very solid at 6, and Boland in the forward line has been scoring well. But I don't think they'll fear them, and they shouldn't fear them because stepping up from Joe McDonagh, they have played with the best, they have matched the best, and there's big momentum coming off that Wexford draw and the fact that they've stayed up in the Division 1, and I think their confidence is sky high. And Dublin are possibly the perfect county to be playing at this stage because Dublin haven't reached the heights. They're a good team, but they're not one of the the Limericks or the Corks or the Tipperaries of this world. So I think it's a really good draw for Antrim, and I wouldn't be surprised if Antrim nick a win or potentially a draw in that game.
They've had good performances, but they haven't had everybody playing well in the whole game. Clark's been good in a couple of games, but quiet in others. McNaughton's been good in some games and not others. If they could get a full performance from everybody, they take a lot of stopping. The
league is fine and the league's for playing, but when it comes to championship time, championships are for winning. And I think it's not a bad thing that they haven't clicked across the park in the league. They've showed glimpses of what they're capable of, but certainly I think against Dublin, if you put all that package together and the work that Gleeson's been doing with them, it is evident, and even their skills in terms of working the ball out and the short passing, which we've been eulogising in terms of what Cork have been doing. Antrim have been every bit as good, and then they can go direct as well through McManus, and I certainly think they're a match for anybody, and I wouldn't be surprised if they turn Dublin over, and it might be worth a few pound at the weekend. There you go. That's what I like to hear. You heard it here first.
The other games are Down, Kerry and Donegal, Mayo. How do you see those going, and how important are these? How important are these competitions for those counties?
Oh, they're everything for the Down and Donegal boys, and having played against a lot of the players that are still lining out for both counties. I think this is very important. The Kerry Down game, it's going to be a difficult one for Down. Down have been going well in patches in the league, but I think Kerry. Obviously, we talked about Antrim, and remember last year that Antrim found it tough going against Kerry in the Joe McDonagh final, and I wouldn't say Down or anywhere near where I suppose Antrim are now. Obviously, in relation to that 9 month cycle, but I think it's going to be a tough day for Down. They have been going well in patches, as I've said, but I just can't see anything but a Kerry win in that fixture. And in terms of Donegal Mayo, I was actually surprised in terms of the league. Obviously Donegal beat Mayo in the Nicky Rackard final, which was a great result for them last year. Then they took a very heavy beating from Kildare in the first league game, but ultimately Kildare beat everyone well in the league this year, and obviously won the 2B. But I think certainly against Mayo, again, Donegal got them on the hop this year in the league, and they will Mayo will be looking for revenge this time around. But I saw that there's a number of the Mayo players that are injured, especially particularly Kenny Feeney had a bad injury in his last game out, so he'll be a big loss to what is, I suppose, a transitional enough Mayo team. But I think Donegal will just have enough for them, and that'll be a big boost for them. And I think that's again a good draw for them in terms of the first round of the championship.
Where do you think the Ulster hurling is at the moment? You know, with these games, with these competitions in mind, where is it in a good place or
probably okay place? Antrim have really stepped it up and shone a light on where Ulster hurling. But I have to say I was slightly disappointed in Derry in the league. I think they may be able to put in better performances in terms of the championship, but to only beat Donegal by a point in the league, and it was a Cormac O'Doherty 100 yards free at the end, which swung the game for them. And I was expecting, with a lot of the Slaughtneil boys on that team, and what they have done in terms of the club championship and putting it up to Ballyhale, etc., that would really push on the hurlers in Derry. But I just haven't seen them putting in the performances that I would have expected. If you're talking about Down and where Derry are in terms of Antrim, there is that big gulf, maybe where when I was playing there wasn't as big a gulf between them. Donegal have certainly stepped it up. In terms of Armagh, they have gone very much backwards in terms of where they were, and it's a very transitional team. And I think under the current management, the best players in Armagh aren't playing, which there's a question mark there as to why they're not. But I think Armagh maybe are nowhere near where they were 5 or 6 years ago. And then in terms of the rest, they probably haven't been that improvement that you would want to see in the likes of Monaghan, and obviously Fermanagh, they just don't have the club teams playing. So I think it's a mixed bag in terms of Ulster, but there's a whole lot more work that could be done and isn't being done, and that's what really I think is the difficulty for Ulster hurling, and that needs to be prioritised in terms of the GAA above all else, in my opinion.
Just to move on, because I want to get one more thing in, we're seeing more people coming back into matches, and not just in the GAA. The Olympics or Japan are talking about bringing in people, and there's a lot of controversy about that. And they're talking about having more people coming into the GAA matches. What are your thoughts? Are they rushing into it? Is it better if they get more people in? What do you think? I mean, are we making the right decisions here in getting people back into the stadiums?
Well, the mantra that has been in the last 18 months is, follow the science, and we're being led by the science. And in circumstances where, especially in this part of the world, where there have been the uptake in terms of vaccines, etc., has been very high, and we had been told that, once the vaccination rollout is at a substantive level, we will have that herd immunity, and then we can go back to living our normal lives. And we're sitting here on the 21st of June, as Boris described it as Freedom Day, when I suppose in England that everything will be back to normal. But let's look at the comparatives globally. We had one of the Euros games in Budapest. There were 60,000 people at it. You had Canelo against Saunders in Austin, Texas, where there was 75,000 people at an indoor venue, and there wasn't that spike in COVID cases in those. Well, certainly in the Canelo fight, because we have the data coming back out of that, and people put that down to vaccinations. But the vaccination rate in Texas compared to this part of the world is a lot lower. So I don't think, especially in outdoor situations where you can take all of the risk assessments and look at everything, and they should be opening up the gates to the fans. It's been a very, very difficult 14, 18 months where we haven't been able to go to games. And yes, you go to watch it on TV, and it's been great, the amount of coverage that the GAA club matches especially have given. But there's nothing like on a sunny afternoon going down to watch your local club play, watch your county play, maybe, you know, bump into a few of your mates, and especially for that older generation that, you know, that's what they look forward to in the summer times, you know, doing the silage and then going down to watch Armagh or watch Down or in the marshes or watch, you know, Derry and Celtic Park. That is a tonic for a lot of people in this part of the world, and I don't think, given the vaccination rates, given the mortality rates, we don't hear about those anymore. I think now is the time, and we're in the summer months. The sun's splitting the trees. The risks are, well, from what we can see, are very low, and I think it would be great for the players to see the supporters there and to hear the supporters, because I think a lot of the games have been very flat going through the league because they don't have the supporters there, you know, roaring the teams on, and it adds that, you know, flavour, that championship flavour, that getting back to normality. And I'm all for seeing supporters in the grounds this year, and I really look forward to that. And we can do away with the fake crowd noises, you know, that the TV cameras are putting on. So to see supporters back, yes, absolutely, let's do that, and I think it would be great.
Jason O'Reilly was our interview in Gaelic Life recently, and he said they were talking in Cavan about how last year's Ulster Championship didn't really feel like a win because they didn't have anybody there to celebrate it. Like, so unlike whenever he was there, whenever he won, you know, in the 90s.
But I think the Cavan guys were happy enough because they didn't have to buy the pints afterwards. Maybe that was it.
So my concern is, what if Derry get to the Ulster final and I can't be there? That would be my concern. You know, if you can't get to your county to be at that game, it's going to be huge. But I think that's a selfish attitude to take. In reality, like, everybody really wants to get out and see their club. We
played a club game yesterday. The sun was splitting the trees. It was a great day, and usually you would have a couple of hundred, if not more, fans coming down to enjoy the social aspect of it, not just the game itself, but to meet up with your neighbours, to meet up with your friends, to get talking to different people, and certainly you haven't seen for a long period of time now. And I think we go back to that community-based GAA that we talked about, you know, the eulogise about the members being the lifeblood of the GAA, and I think certainly given where we are and given following the science as they talk about, I think there's no reason why we can't, on an outdoor arena, bring back fans on a managed basis to bring back that life and that, you know, and the fun back to the GAA. And that, I think, in the days when Armagh were doing well and we were going up to Clonus, and, you know, those are memories that I'll always take with me, and it would be unfair to rob you know, the older generation and the younger generation of those memories. So let's do it. We're in the summer, the risks are low. I think now's the time to get on with it.
Cahal, that's great. The conclusions I'm drawing is hopefully we'll get more people back at games and get your money on Antrim to beat Dublin.
Yeah, you heard it here first.
Cahal, thanks for your time. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks a lot, Ronan.
So I'd like to welcome Clare Timoney, the former Antrim player and current Bredagh senior player, to take her points. Thanks for coming in, Clare. I wanted you to come in just to talk about the Ulster Championship, the Ladies Ulster Championship in general, but just to start, how has life been since you retired from the intercounty game not so long ago?
I would say I definitely have a lot more free time, that's for sure. But it's one of those things, you always find something else to kind of, you know, you end up doing. So I must say, I actually moved to Canada pretty much directly after finishing playing county football for 2 years. So on my return, I sort of thought, you know, playing for Bredagh was certainly enough. And I think as you sort of get a bit older, your career takes over, and for me that has really been the case. So playing county or playing club football has certainly kind of given me the same sort of highs that I had playing county football as well. So I think just really life and work has sort of, you know, taken over really, and that sort of filled my time. So, and I have a better social life now because of it. So,
how did you balance playing club and county? Did you find it was a lot of a strain on you?
It definitely is. I suppose it's one of those things. Managers always want you to play for the club, and they always want you to play for the county, and often or not, as much as they maybe say they work together, often not, it's down to the player. And I think, there's become a lot more of importance on recovery. And I think the progression over the last few years, you've seen that recovery. So I would say from that point of view, I think because you've played for such a long time at a county and club level, you kind of just manage your time, and I suppose it's good preparation for work-life balance going down the line, that you manage your time. So I think you just get used to it, really. But it certainly does come with its complexities, and you do miss an awful lot of social and family events because of it.
What age were you whenever you started for the county team?
I was actually playing senior county football from 14. So, I kind of grew up playing, county football and playing club. So I was playing for 4 and 5 teams at a time. So, you just managed your time, and also was coupling that with playing soccer as well. So you didn't really have much time in between. So my mum wasn't too happy because there wasn't enough studying done in between times. But yeah, I think you just find a way of coping.
I interviewed Anya Tubridy recently for the paper, and she spoke about how she started playing senior club when she was 12, and I just don't think men maybe don't understand how that can happen. It just seems so much of a challenge. But is it perhaps to do with, maybe girls are more mature, or they can handle those sort of situations? Or is it just, or what do you think?
It's just one of those things. I suppose when you're younger and you always want to, if you're being chosen to go up and play at maybe that's more senior level, you never really turn that opportunity down. So you're sort of excited by that prospect, and I suppose it's just something that you don't really dwell on it. I suppose at that age you just want to go and play football because you just love playing, really. But like in hindsight, I would say now when I look at kids and I'm involved with Queen's ladies, and you can sort of see the burnout from players when they're trying to juggle both. But just when they've played so much football over the years, even by the time they get to the point of university,
But you also were playing soccer as well, so you were balancing 3 different teams.
Yeah, I was playing for Linfield. I started my career playing for Ballymena, and then progressed. Then sort of the last few years of my soccer career I was playing for Linfield, and I suppose it meant that there had to be sort of a bit of a cooperation with the manager, that I maybe didn't make every single training because it just physically wasn't possible. However, they knew that you were fit and you were going to be ready, match ready. But certainly you sort of had to dip in, and you always felt like you were disappointing someone almost because you weren't always able to make every training session. But I think managers, they'll work with you because they want you to be able to play for them. So I don't know how on earth I managed it at times, to be honest with you. But yeah, it just really came down to sort of time management and trying to recover, in between times. And now when I look back, I don't think I probably did half enough of what I could have been doing. But I think now with the likes of ice baths and things like that, and people are in the sea most nights, if I had been doing a bit more of that, I probably would be coping a bit better now. So.
Oh really? So then you think, is that just because you didn't know about it, or just you didn't think?
Yeah, it just really wasn't. It wasn't really the in thing at the time. I think we just kind of marched on, and you were training every single night. Whereas now I think there's a lot more about player welfare, and I think there's a lot more focus on making sure players are recovering properly. And I think there's so many gadgets and things like that. You've got the likes of your stat sports and things like that to sort of show what levels players have recovered and things like that. So there's so much more information now readily available to us that I think probably it could have helped. But at the same time, you just loved playing football, and you were out every single night of the week, and that was just life.
Yeah, I remember Brian Neeson. He was goalkeeper for Cliftonville and played for Antrim up front. But he said that in Gaelic we train 8 or 10 weeks for one match, but in soccer you train 2 nights, and when you're playing 38 games or whatever it is, it's the balance is wrong. Yeah. But he enjoyed the soccer side. He enjoyed the the training side and the skills side of soccer, but he
Yeah.
enjoyed the big day for the county.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's funny, I would say the Gaelic football, the training is so much tougher. And I think actually playing soccer, a lot of the Linfield manager would always love, you know, the fact that you'd be coming in and you'd be rolling up your sleeves, and if there was any hard work to be done, it was no problem, you know, because I suppose they often think maybe the soccer players are a bit soft, you know. But it is, you know, you're sort of focusing, there's a lot more games coming up within the soccer calendar, and I think, you know, you sort of, as you say, you're preparing maybe 2 or 3 days in advance, and it is that wee bit different, you know, and I think there's just a very different culture as well.
Do you think that then that there should be less training in Gaelic football? Do you think we train too much?
Well, I mean, for me, I absolutely love a good hard training session, and you know, so I think the game is only going more so in the way that teams are becoming more conditioned. I think if you look at the ladies' game now, I was actually commenting just at the weekend, like a lot of the players are so slender, you know, their physiques have almost changed. I think I would say in the last sort of 10, 15 years, there would have been more of a focus on strength and conditioning, and that's certainly still there, but there's a lot more conditioning, and I think the players are sort of better built, you know, for the game at the moment, and it's just it can be a running game, you know, particularly half forward and half back line. So I wouldn't stray away from the training. I don't think it's too difficult, but I think, yeah, it's just becoming much more of a commitment, that it's becoming quite difficult actually to juggle and to play more than one sport, for sure.
You've seen this both sides. You've seen the soccer side and you've seen the GA side, but you've also seen the side of club football in Antrim and the club football in Down as well, because you started out playing club football in Antrim, then moved to Down. Yeah. What's that change been like, and why did you make it?
So I played for All Saints in Ballymena from a young age right up until I was 18, and unfortunately our team folded when I was 18, so I was sort of at a point where I didn't know what club maybe to go to. I was studying at Jordanstown, and I had county colleagues, the McCann sisters, and they were playing for Bredagh. So it sort of felt, you know, like a natural maybe move. There was a few players, I think Bredagh has been renowned for being a blow-in club, and so I sort of felt like I would probably fit in quite well, you know, going to play for Bredagh. So I felt that there would be a greater challenge for me personally playing in a Down club, and I think with the league at the time when I was playing for All Saints, Moneyglass were very much dominating, and St Paul's were coming through. So it was, those two teams were very much, you know, fighting for the title every year. And not that I didn't fancy playing for either team, I just sort of felt like I didn't have allegiance to either team, and it felt like the Down League would be something new for me. So, and I must say I've thoroughly enjoyed, I've been playing for Bredagh for over 10 years now, and it really does feel like it's my club and has been for a long time. And over the years we've really had our ups and downs, and I think just the last few years, you know, we've really started to become strengthened sort of the Bredagh setup, and you know, we've enjoyed sort of fruits of that. So
yeah, how would you compare it to the Antrim leagues though? You know, because Antrim have only got, you know, St Paul's are the #1 team in Antrim. How does it compare?
Yeah, well, I suppose, I mean, St Paul's are certainly they are a team to beat coming out of Antrim, but I feel there's very little competition for the likes of St Paul's. Moneyglass, I mean, they're a fantastic team too, and have certainly pushed St Paul's right to the wire every single year. But there is still a little bit of a gap there, and I sort of feel the likes of St Paul's would probably, you know, it probably would be worthwhile if they were nearly moving into the neighbouring county of Down and maybe challenging the likes of ourselves and Cardiff in the Down Championship, because I think certainly we would all rise up, you know, that level that we would be, you know, maybe going into the sort of Ulster Club Championship, you know, we would be better prepared. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think for the future for Bredagh? Like, where do you think they can go? What can be achieved?
I mean, I suppose you always have to aim high, but I really feel, you know, we are capable of winning an Ulster, you know, club title and All Ireland as well. You know, I feel like there's very little amongst the top teams in Ulster. And so I think, you know, if you get out of Ulster as well, I mean, of course you're going to be playing against fantastic teams in the south, but, you know, I certainly feel that we're more than capable. We've really strengthened this year. We've brought in, there's 2 or 3 players that have actually returned, having been on their travels, and I feel that that experience that's come back into the team, coupled with the experience that the younger girls have, they've another year under their belt, so I think, we really will be a force to reckon with. But the biggest problem is getting games. And I think that could be our only downfall this year, is not actually getting the friendly games and getting the competition that is at that level, because I think when we reach the Ulster sort of, fixtures, you're not at that level, you haven't prepared at that level, and that's where we've fallen down.
Yeah, and that can't really be solved then. I was going to say, well, there's clubs starting up like East Belfast, but that's not what you need. You need the other teams to be moved up.
Yeah, and I mean the strategy this year for the club, for the senior team was certainly to go and go on our travels and play teams down south. But I mean we had attempted to get a few games with a Donegal club and a Dublin club, this week and the past week, and with different regulations in place, we're not actually allowed to play a club team across the border. So we're already we're already coming up with difficulties on playing games. So it's just getting games that are going to be at that level. So we're now attempting to play county teams, maybe a second string of county teams, because we're not getting the competition within our county.
Needs must, isn't that the case?
Yeah.
Because we're in the middle of the Ulster Ladies Championship, I wanted to ask you about what you think so far. We've had 2 games so far. What do you think in general? Where do you think Ulster Ladies football is, and how do you think it's going to go this year?
I think certainly the likes of Donegal and Armagh, they are really going to be pushing. I think whoever wins, I suppose I'm probably making a bit of a presumption there that Armagh will get past Tyrone, but I suppose just with the sort of league fixtures and the results that there's been, you would expect maybe Armagh to push on into the final. And I think those Donegal and Armagh are going to be probably the 2 strongest teams coming out of Ulster this year, and they are likely to have a lot of success, I would expect, in the All-Ireland series too. You've seen Donegal there push Cork right to the wire about 2 weeks ago. So, it's exciting times, and certainly, for me as a forward, you love to see that attack and play, and both the likes of Donegal and Armagh have got fantastic forwards. And so, I think anything is possible with those teams, and I think particularly because of this year and the year that's in it, the National League has been condensed and there's been no break right into Championship as well. So, it sort of is one of those things that it's whoever performs on the day.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And in general, though, where do you think ladies football is in terms of compared to when you were playing? Has it increased dramatically?
Yeah, I think it certainly has improved. I think ladies Gaelic football, over the last number of years, has been dominated by the likes of Cork in the senior game. But I think Ulster probably was a lot stronger, maybe about 10 years ago. But I think it's starting to creep back up. The likes of the Armaghs and Donegals are starting to improve. Monaghan are rebuilding, as are Tyrone. So I think once those teams, continue to rebuild and are moving up in the National League, once you're getting that competition, I think that will help. But it certainly has improved in the sense that, a lot of the recovery, as I said, and strength and condition and preparation, there's a lot more available to the women's teams, and I think we are a few years behind the men's game, and we always have been, and I think you can sort of see that progression in terms of, tactics and kickouts and things like that. There's a much greater focus on those areas, which we would not have had, and we certainly wouldn't have had a focus on in years gone by. Which just from my coaching experience, with the likes of Queens, I've just seen, such intensity in terms of, just walking out exactly how we're going to play and things like that, which would never really have been done. So there's been a lot of progression, in the last few years, which has been exciting to see.
And for Antrim, would it be in progress mean, you know, moving up the leagues as well?
Unfortunately, Antrim haven't really progressed in the last number of years, which for me has been really disappointing. When I sort of retired, I'd hoped that I would sort of leave it in a better place than when I had began. But we just haven't really overly progressed. I mean, we're still in the Division 4. Now the girls got to the Division 4 final this year, but we've sort of got to that stage, you know, quite a few times and just haven't got over that hurdle and into Division 3. And I think it really requires, you know, making that leap into Division 3 and trying to maintain that status of playing against those stronger teams. I mean, you can only get better when you're playing against better competition. So for me, I think they really need to get up to that level and hopefully build on that, you know. So that's where Antrim hopefully will go in the next few years. So hopefully.
Clare, that's great. Appreciate you coming in. Thank you for your time.
No problem. Anytime. Thank you very much.